Good morning, traders. Welcome to the pre-market analysis that we open up to the public every single Wednesday. Thanks for joining us this morning via YouTube. Going to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of what's going to happen this morning. By the way, this is Spartan speaking, by the way. Once I'm done, Beth's going to come on, give you a breakdown of the macro environment, anything that's happened over from a news perspective over the course of this evening or last evening, and then this morning, going through any big picture items, commodities, etc., that makes sense to be looking through today. Once that's done, I'm going to come on. We're going to be going through some names that have been gapping up, gapping down, individual names. We'll go through the news associated with those names, as well as go through the technicals, build an action plan for them, and then go through the SPY and FANG as well. After that's done, South Beach will come on, go through some of the analyst calls that he's looking at for today, individual names, as well as macro side from his perspective. And then we'll do a quick little recap of those individual names, as well as the SPY and the FANG. After that's done, and we'll be ready for the open. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead, pass over to Beth, and I'll talk to you guys shortly. Beth, if you're ready, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my friends. Welcome. Pre-market here at Spartan Trading. This is what we do every morning, Monday through Friday. Warm welcome to our new members as well, and those joining us through the live YouTube stream. We've got a lot to talk about. And obviously, I'm going to do, my focus today is going to be on the Chinese trade, where we are in the cycle, what to look for, what to watch out for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But before that, let's get to the macroeconomic data. Okay, Germany, IFO business climate, softer, a little bit better, conditions were better, expectations softer. You know, this is what we're going to see on a day-to-day basis, especially as we get these headlines, these flash headlines in terms of the Delta variant. And that's to be expected. Obviously, we have on Friday, we have what was to be Jackson Hole meeting. So it's now Jackson Hole virtual meeting. We'll see what Powell has to say. We will see in advance of his speech. So we'll get an idea of what's on his mind. The Fed heads have been talking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Durable goods is the most important economic data coming out for us today. Okay. This is the world we live in, right? Supply chain disruptions. What's notable, if you look at a company like Dick's, who had literally no problem with their supply chain, and yet you look at other companies that do have supply chain issues. So this puts an extra layer on earnings in terms of figuring out, teasing through what this quarter is going to look like as we report, right? And we've talked about supply chain every single day almost, and it is a big issue, and it does raise prices, and that's where the systemic inflation. I don't know how systemic. You know, I think it's systemic. I don't think it's transitory. Okay, today. Cybersecurity. Did you do it? Microsoft, Apple, Google. Happy 10th year for Tim Cook at Apple, right? Yesterday. See how this plays out. I think this is a huge issue, and some serious money has to be spent on this, and some serious attention needs to be spent on this. Positive side, the busiest port reopens. Okay, the bottlenecks are crazy. You're talking, even though it was a 2-week closure, you're talking much longer for that to get through. It's just an absolute disaster. Well, I shouldn't say disaster. Shit show? Yeah, that's better. Okay. Japan having issues, 8 more prefectures. This is just the world we live in. On the positive side, right? Israel is the litmus test, right, for everything that deals with these vaccines. They're in the front trenches. They're the gold standard. The boosters are working. You know this, the boosters are working. So I think with this data and with the Pfizer being full FDA approval, LFG, 8 months, let's do it, right? Okay, so they increased it to 30s and over. You know, why wouldn't you? We have vaccines wasting, spoiling. This is my pet peeve with the government. Why not give it to countries that can distribute it before it spoils, right? I don't know. This is a bad thing. I don't see how this gets passed, but We have to deal with it. I think if this does get passed, I don't think see how it can, but if it does, the Fed's going to be tapering a hell of a lot sooner. Because look at all the liquidity that's going to come back into the market again. We got 1 trillion plus 3.5 trillion. That's a lot of money, guys. I'm not in favor of this, but we shall see. Inflation versus jobs. So this is the trade-off, because the Fed has been hanging their hat on the jobs as opposed to the inflation's there in the background, and we know what they're looking at and yada yada. But the theme has been jobs, jobs, jobs. Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. And if anybody says they know what's going to happen here, they don't. We've never experienced this ever. We are rewriting the books. Econ 101 going to change forever based off the pandemic and quantitativism, global quantitativism. Here's another thing we have to talk about. Now, what you have to understand is that this is going to be next year. The actual impact comes next year in terms of the pricing, because these farmers, they basically lock in their prices 6 to 12 months before the crops, okay? So they're not going to see the benefit of this until, well, some of these will be going out. There's going to have to be some sort of support system from the federal government as aid to these farmers. But what do? I mean, literally, what do? How are you going to get the water? Desalinization, I guess, I don't know. It's a big deal. Not so much, well, for the present and future, I don't know how that plays out. I don't think we've seen this sort of heat slash, we've seen droughts before, right? The Dust Bowl, well, a lot of you don't even know what the hell that is. But anyways, we have seen droughts before, but not this drought and this sort of heat. So, well done. Look at Arizona. I don't know. This is it. Well, let's see what happens. I don't know. Earnings calendar. We have some really great earnings this week, guys. I mean, it's just, it's kind of under the radar, but it's really super cool, right? So see how this plays out. We got it morning and then we have the afternoon. All of these have been beating, and we know how that looks, right? Let's take a look at our peeps here, tip rings. So for me, this is, I always like to see, okay, what's going on? So UNVO, FDS, and PKTEF. So what am I looking for? Top analysts, 70+% success rate, average returns, upgrades, initiations. There you go. Yesterday. What you would expect, XLP down, XLV down, real estate, a little bit, XLK was down a little bit, and XLU. Energy has been kind of beasting, right, on the bounce. I still have my SEO puts on as a hedge against my SEO. We'll see how this plays out, but you can see here, Best Buy, Las Vegas, when they were the top dog, Caesars, right, Penn National, and then we got the energy stocks. So opening trades, right? So for me, I'd like back-to-back stuff. I'm just a little bit tired. One day up, one day down, one day up, one day down, one day down, down. I don't know. It's very disconcerting, but it doesn't matter because Spartan gets us the momentum trades. That's all we care about, right? So China holds over 40 IPOs amid regulatory. You know what? They're backpedaling a lot of their stuff. Who the hell knows? I mean, but this is what we live with. If you're involved in the Chinese trade, I told everybody, everybody knew I was accumulating everything and I was very bullish on it. I told everybody, I have nothing short dated right now. I only have long dated. So when I'm talking long dated, I'm talking low delta 2023 stuff. I don't have anything beyond that. I have a little bit of Baidu spread, right? And a little bit of DD, but most of it was taken off yesterday. In terms of the short date stuff, taken out. Let's talk about memes. Wow, okay. 142 million shares yesterday. 71.9 million average. AMC, GME, right? Top dogs, these two. Right? And then you see the drop off, not even close. Right? Clover did get a lot of stuff too. And Blackberry, we have to keep an eye on that because this has been scanning for multiple weeks. I'm still in my longer dated stuff. I have a pretty good size, and we're still in that 2023 spread, the 3240, right? It's working nicely. I haven't sold any of that, guys. So that's in the background. It's just got a fantastic delta, and I don't care. Okay, I'm just saying. All right. Let's take a look at flow yesterday. This I don't know. I mean, this was really interesting, this GDS. Right? IWM, once again, we are getting close right now, guys, where Mama says, this won't end well. Guess what? This won't end well. We are entering strong seasonality for small caps, low floats, yada, yada, yada. We're seeing that just in terms of volume on the retail side, Spartan shouted stuff out, okay? We are still to have, obviously, on the momentum, breakouts, breakdowns on the larger cap, mega cap, stuff like that. And we do have some things that we're taking to the woodshed, like opening stocks and stuff like that, that can have a robust bounce. But, okay, we are getting into strong seasonality for IWM. All right, Devin, I didn't follow this trade. TSP, this really intrigued me. I didn't follow it, but I've never really seen it. It was printing all day yesterday on the option volume side on the large percentage basis. Okay, so what else was scanning? SPIT, CAR was scanning again, DLP and nonstop as well, multiple prints, 2,500 times normal volume, right? Now, granted, it was only 15,000, but obviously we have like only 100 open interest, right? So anyways, AMC, GME, Uber was getting a lot of stuff too. Let's go. Hype. What's got? It's not, we haven't had 6 in a while, guys. GME made it. So you can see the volume change in social media prints. Bobalicious. That's fine. Baidu and JD and Sony Group. Okay, that's 2. All right, what do we got? Leverage drops and stocks surge. Well, that's not a bad thing, but this is merging to debt is kind of coming around. What does it mean, though, when this happens? It's actually bullish for the market, right? So the debt change was 4.4%, so that's notable, right? It's bullish. Last time this happened, guys, was in 2014. This goes back to 1945. So this is something we can't ignore. Bullish, bullish, bullish. I would have preferred to be 80%, but hell, 78%. If we were right 78% of the time, right? The billionaires, just say. But anyways, it's bullish. You can't, this is why, for especially new traders, you never want to pick tops. Just say, yes, we're going to have pullbacks, 5, 10%, 20% individual tickers on the indices. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. But picking tops in a quantitative easing melt up market, you're going to lose 9 times out of 10. Just saying. Cash holdings dropped as well. Free credit have plunged. What does that mean? Not as definitive. This is 64%. This is 64%. So sloppy, a little bit sloppy choppy. So in conjunction with, but if you go farther out, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, but 2 years, 3 years, look at that, 82%. Going back to 1937. Love it. A record in negative net worth. Wow, didn't see that coming. Look at this, available cash as a percentage of total US equity market capitalization. Didn't see that either. Let's move on. McClellan, let's see. This has been so hard, guys, and this is why a lot of these indicators are just like stuff that we used to look at is so complex, and that's because of quantitative easing. I mean, things that like, the CNN Fear and Greed Index, yada, yada, yada. McClellan Oscillator prints divergences. The VIX prints divergences. And it's really hard because, number one, we have retail. Now, granted, it's a lot more complex than the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s. And the reason being is because of the knowledge in terms of using options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all kinds of things are playing into this that just make it complex. Irregardless, growth versus value is still the debate since, as Southbridge would say, God was a little baby boy, okay? Or girl, right? Gender neutral. I'm just saying. Heat map, we had a beautiful green heat map. Now we got not so much, And what do we got? Argentina, don't cry for me, Argentina. Wow, 92, what about 2-year XOT? Keep an eye on that. Oils went from single green digits all the way up on a rubber band elasticity. So this is the elasticity theory, especially on the downside here, guys. This is why it's so much easier when you get an oversold condition, buying it versus overbought, because you can stay overbought on a momentum basis. Statistics, 82% when you break out all-time highs, monthly, weekly, daily, it doesn't matter. That the next 5 to 8 trading days are up or down based off of the breakout or breakdown. 82%. That's a big deal. It's all about stats for me. Anyways, let's move on. Nothing going on here. A little bit of money. Let's do this. A little bit of money out of the SPY. Nothing. I mean, volume's starting to get lighter and lighter and lighter. But that allows for larger movements based off of smaller dollars because it's lighter and lighter. So you get a buy program or a sell program, it's going to have a hell of a lot more impact, right, than what would normally happen. And this is going to continue on, obviously, until after Labor Day. And then we have the FOMC, right? And then we have to see what's going to happen with tapering, then earnings, all kinds of stuff. Money, mutual fund flows, still a little bit not as good as it was January to March. This is July to September. Still on, as you can see, on the light side, right? But at least it's not coming out. It's still up. Available cash continues to shrink, right? So this is all saying that the market's kind of all in. A lot of people are in it. Equity to money market ratio. So it's not as severe as it is, believe it or not. Isn't that crazy? It's not as severe as it was in 2018 before we had that pullback, right? But look at this. Crazy, right? You wouldn't expect that. Retail money market ratios continues to get lower, right? Mutual fund cash flows, there was a little spike, that's coming back down, and obviously we have to deal with the consumer sentiment, right? VXN. All right, let's see. This is the craziest thing, right? But this tells us a lot of things in terms of traders, what they're doing. This is kind of like equilibrium. We've been mucking around between this high and low for quite some time now. And this tells us that in terms of hedges that, institutions, whatever, are not willing to go more all in than what they are right now. Now, this is really a fun one for us, right? It's right at the mid, but on the extreme, I think this is going to really be a nice way to trade. So on the VIX, this tells us on the VIX on the extreme against the VXN. So this is going to tell us whether we should be buying or selling the VIX. Kind of cool, I think so. Bonds, let's go, let's do it. Okay, yields are up on the 5, 10, 30, down on the 2-year, right? So that's not bad, that's steepening, we like that, right? Canada up across the board globally, except in Japan. Let's do it. 5-year, nothing there. It is kind of creeping higher though, notable, right? Here's the 10-year, right at the breakout level here, guys. We have to keep an eye on this. And so we shall. I want to look at the Chinese because what they've been doing in terms of letting their currency weaken as well as the interest rate side. This is a key indicator to tell us what's going on here. And, I still think the reason why they're backpedaling, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because I don't think the Chinese government was prepared for the capital outflows that they saw. Okay, I'm just saying. Stock futures, let's see what's going on here. Slightly down a little bit up overseas, down in Asia Pacific Rim, a little bit up in some areas. So it's all over, sloppy choppy, who cares, right? DAX, still holding the breakout, all-time high. Fez, this is really interesting. This is a huge divergence here, guys. So I'm keeping an eye on that. We have a pretty good position on that as a swing. Here comes the FTSE, nah. Here's the EFA, small caps trying to break out on the downside. This is the one that we care about. This is the IWM against the EFA. We want this to go down. IWM start to outperform the EFA. EEM, okay, here we are, right? This is a big deal. This is the monthly. This is the pivot we wanted to hold, 51.46. So a lot of things happened yesterday, okay, to the degree that it did not break out on the monthly and on the weeklies, okay? So it was daily extensions that we bounced into. So what does that mean? The risk is still that this market can indeed go down. So we have to look for indicators that would be a red flag. So one of those would be right here with the A-shares 38.18. And this is how you want to look at it, okay? So here we are as well. This would be a pivot right here. So if we do indeed, and that's exactly where we're at right now, this low is 70.49, okay? That would mean that we can run the risk. I don't think we take out this double bottom. This is the weekly. All right, look at the candle we've got here. It's stopped at the 23.6% fair. Huge warning sign. Am I still in my stuff yet? Do I have any hedges on? Not yet. I want to see what happens today. If we do start to see some of these things breaking down, then I will indeed start buying some hedges, okay? And I'll be lightly hedged mainly because I only have longer dated low delta trades on right now, okay? Here's KWeb. This is the weekly, okay? Let's see if it can. And as you can see, it stopped right at, and I mentioned this yesterday, okay? It stopped right at this downtrend of this bear flag. So it hasn't broken the bear flag, so it hasn't negated it. Red flag, right? So and we're sitting here as well, right at the pivot as to where I would get out, okay? Or buy some hedges. So that 49 right now, you can see on this extension, 49.35, something like that. So let's keep an eye on that, okay? Here's KWeb on the daily. You can see the same thing. You see it in better detail, right? So what did we do? Well, now we got gaps all over the place, but it's potential that we will fill this gap down to 46.39. So probably on the open, I will buy a little bit of KWeb puts, maybe out to September, okay? But it's gonna be a light amount because of my, I don't have any leverage stuff on right now, all right? Chicks. All right, so this is the communication one. Failed to hold the extension, this is the monthly, okay? Red flag, red flag, red flag. So we have to be aware of that. So on all of these things, guys, you should not have a lot on the Chinese side until we basically will come back down. This is the narrative, what I think is going to happen. Coming back down, and then we start to go up. But as you can see here, the look on the chicks is not like it was on the others because we're below last month's low. So this is something that I probably would look to buy some puts on. Because this is weaker than some of the other things. Right. Okay. My time is up, believe it or not. Welcome once again for those of you who are joining us pre-market. Time for me to pass it on to Spartan. Are you ready, sir?
Just need a couple minutes here, Beth.
Not a problem. Okay, so let's take a peek here. This is chicks against KWeb, right? Interestingly enough, it pulled back but didn't pierce through this 23.6% fit. So if we look at it here as well, right? This is another red flag. So I got some red flags coming in here. And this is what happens when you have these massive ranges and bottoming. It's huge, right? So we have a pivot here that it bounced off of. And what has to happen, this is monthly, we have to break this downtrend line, right? So it's all about risk reward, right? So right now it's 1/3 on the way down, 2/3 on the way up. We do still have that double top and that's in place, but we have to start thinking in terms of risk reward. FXI, same narrative, guys. Look at this. It basically on the monthly had reclaimed this downtrend line, now below it. And if you look at this EMA, the 100 EMA on the monthly, yikes. Right? So this is another indication that, well, maybe I should be putting some hedges on. All right, here it is on the daily. Here's the extension. You can see it. So when you're looking at these types of events, yes, you can look at the daily, but in terms, you have to look at the weekly, monthly for the bigger picture, okay? Because you're going to have this daily telling you one thing, but if you look in terms of the bigger picture now, even on the daily, guys, you can see this extension, right? That goes back to March, and reversion to the mean. It didn't hold and didn't break through. Another red flag. Okay. Here's CWeb, same thing. Guess what? Right. So on the whole, right now, on a risk reward basis, right, the downside risk is greater than the upside risk right now, just because of what's transpired, right? Things are holding up in terms of the downtrend line, right? We need another leg up in order to relieve that. And you know, to me, it's all about risk reward. So it's time for me looking at these things, if this continues, for me to buy some hedges on my China portfolio. Right? And you never know what's going to happen with these guys. I want to see with these names, I want to see them get bought up, right, today. If they're not, then at the end of the day, I'll put some hedges on. All right, Baidu, what's going on here? All right, so if we claim the 78.6, this is a great bounce, right? But a 2, right, on the monthly, right, didn't hold, didn't need it to hold, right? So you can see right here, this is the pivot, last month's low, 153.14, right? So we'll have to see what happens here. We don't know. I mean, but on a risk reward, it's a well-defined risk reward for me right now. So for me, this 153, where we're at right now, last month's low, 153, a little bit above it, 153.14 is important. And we'll see what happens, right? We'll see. So it's going to be exciting. I think this week is going to continue to be exciting. This is Baidu against the CWEB. So you can see here. Double tap in place. See how it plays out. Don't know. But look at, I mean, this is the problem when you have a massive candle like that, right? The month before. Okay.
All right, Beth, I'm ready to pop on.
All right, my friends, enjoy. Take care.
All right, Beth, thank you so much. Guys, morning, what's going on? Let me just pop up the screen share here. All righty. So if you guys are new to chat, the Discord link is definitely emailed to you. Make sure to click that link, and I'll show you what to do when to come in just a second here. But if you can't find it in your main email, it's going to be in your junk email address there. When you guys do come to Discord, it's going to look like this. First area to go to guys disclaimer section, then go to the new to chat information section and start at the top and read from the top down. We'll go through that in more detail once we close down the YouTube stream later. But if you are new, make sure to check that out this morning. All right, pre-market tickers on watch, guys. Let's take a look at what we got going on this morning. Oh, and just real quick, guys, before we get to that, our C pop, we did get our pop overnight on our spec play. Make sure to sell at least half of that. So pretty pumped about that. Nice way to start off the day, and then we'll see where the rest can end up. Does have a lot of room back to the upside. Just real quick as well. Let's just take a look at where she's got room to right now as your next resistance point. Let's see. Okay, so 561, 648. So just those are the next two levels on the upside. All right. Anyways, let's take a look at what we got going on today. Couple different things into Okta, TSM, DKS, SABA, and SPRT. Into earnings beat, EPS and revs, year-over-year growth 41%, Q1 guidance lowered, 2022 guidance raised. Stocks gapping up on that. Okta, Raymond James upgrades Okta to strong buy, raises price target to $310. Stocks gapping up. TSM, company plans to increase prices on some more advanced products by 10%. Stock gapping up. DKS earnings beat, EPS and revs, year-over-year growth 20.7%, 2022 guidance raised. Stocks up on that, so solid earnings. SABA, law firm requests FDA halt study after hours yesterday, and we saw that dip. They also had an agreement with the FDA on special protocol assessments for its phase 3 study, which that actually came out right before the close. But I thought I'd mention it as well, just because obviously the FDA is, I don't think, plans on halting it. But anyways, that's what's going on there. SPRT gapping up in continuation from last day's move. Let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint today. So first two we're going to be looking at Into and Okta. So Into Okta, let's take a look. Into coming off earnings, and then Okta with that upgrade. Let's put this on the side as well. Okay, there we go. So let's take a look at Into on the daily here. We are breaking to, I believe, all-time highs, but let's take a quick look. Yep. These bigger names that are breaking all-time highs lately being pretty solid trades out the gates recently. So let's take a look at where we got room to. Yeah, that should suffice, actually. Let's take a look at this thing intraday. Okay, so 569, 559, 552. And 86. Okay. All right, so 569.07 pivot to the upside today. This level is able to hold. We got room towards 579.77. That level breaks. The 580, what was that? 586.50, I think it was. 586.50 will be tested. Unable to hold the pivot, 569.07. Look for a pullback towards 559.81 to 552.88 on the upside. Overall, and into going to be leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher today. I think we get a slight pullback on the open, and then we'll be looking for that pivot to hold for the next leg up. So that is into, let's take a look at Okta. We do have a couple levels here already, it looks like. Here they have to go. What is that? Okay. All right, let's take a look at this thing intraday here. All right, Okta. It's a nice upgrade from Raymond James this morning. So 256.53 pivot. This level is unable to hold. We have room lower on the name into the 252.04 to 246.04 on the downside, able to hold. We can see continuation towards 261.46 to that 266.52 level on the upside. Overall, on Okta, going to be leaning on the bullish side today. Bullish neutral, looking for a grind higher. Pivot needs to hold for that continuation push to the upside, though. That is going to be the key. So that is Okta. Let's take a screenshot of these both, and let's move on to the next two, TSM and DKS. So TSM, DKS, next two. Let's take a look here. So TSM, nice little gap up here. Company plans to increase price on some more advanced products, which is what it's gapping up on. A little bit of a rebound off the bottom end of the range, which we talked about the last couple sessions. So 113 main support reclaim. That's a big level for it. Back into the 50 EMA on the daily. It's got some potential to actually move some more today on the upside. Definitely some room to the next resistance points. Support here. Okay, let's take a look at this thing intraday here. I shouldn't give it the bottom end of that range support labeled as well. There she is. $115.88 pivot levels able to hold. I got room towards 117.91 to 119.52. Unable to hold. We look for a pullback towards 114.16 to 112.99 on the downside. Overall on TSM, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side as well today. Only if we can get above that pivot. If we can't get above the pivot, it's a 50 EMA rejection on the daily. It's going to pull back, in my opinion. So big level for it to push into this morning and reclaim. That's what I'll be watching for, and we'll see what happens. All right, let's take a look at this DKS. Nice breakout to all-time highs. This thing's been on an absolute tear lately as well. Earnings have been very solid. Let's see here. 19, 21. $25s. Get rid of the 125. We'll eliminate that. Oops. Yeah. All right, so $126.34 pivot to the upside today. This level was able to hold. We got room towards 130.63 to 132.66 on DKS. Unable to hold. Look for a pullback towards 121.31 to 118.06 on the downside. Overall, on DKS, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today as well. Looking for a hold of the pivot, continuation push higher. I love names that break out to all-time highs, especially on positive earnings with good guidance. So I think we can see continuation there if that pivot can hold this morning. So I'm going to be leaning bullish on that name for now. Let's take a look at the next two, SAVA and SPRT. All right, so obviously SAVA gapping down. A little bit of room for continuation of the downside here. Let's label all these supports. I think that should be okay. Yeah, looks fine. Perfect. There we go. Actually see the bottom end. All right, 80.72 guys, going to be the pivot to the downside today. This level's unable to hold. We got room towards 71.96. That level breaks. We can see further continuation into the 65 level on the downside. Able to hold a pivot. We look for a continuation push back towards 90.86 to 98.22 on the upside. Overall in SAVA right now, going to be leaning bearish. You know, I think it's just kind of coming back to earth just because it's being a little bit overvalued anyways for a long period of time. Now that money's flowing out of it, I think it can continue for a little bit. So I'm going to be leaning bearish, looking for continuation, continuation lower if that pivot is unable to hold. All right, let's take a look at this SPRT. Okay, so a little bit of a gap up from last day. I know it had a bigger move, of course, but it's pushing back or trying to push back into last day's highs. Okay, let's take a look at this thing intraday. $16, we'll call it. All right, 1262 guys, pivot to the upside today. This level is able to hold. You got rid of what's that 1472 spot. If that level breaks, we can see further continuation towards 1616. So that Fibonacci extension level on the upside. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback into the 1089 to 955 on the downside. Overall on SPRT, going to be leaning on the bear side today, looking for a pop topping up the gate for a little bit of a pullback. It's extended on the daily, and I think that, you know, that extension is going to continue out the gate if it does get a little bit of a pop. So it's going to have some selling pressure, in my opinion, to fill that little gap. So that is SAVA, that is SPRT. All right, let's take a look at the next two names. Or sorry, not the next two names, the SPY and FANG. So let's see what's going on in the market here. Might as well keep it zoomed out. 448.59 is going to be the pivot to the upside today. Obviously, we've been consolidating inside on the market. We'll see if we can break out to the upside today or not. 448.859 able to hold. Look for a push back towards 449.86 to 450.71. Unable to hold 447.18 to 415.97 will be tested. Sorry, 445.97 will be tested on the downside. Overall in the market, leaning bullish neutral. I think it's doing a pretty good job of holding up here. It did consolidate for a day, and I think we can push out of that consolidative period to the upside now. Looking for a break, of course, that 448.59 for that continuation. So that is the SPY. Let's take a look at Apple. Apple pivots to the upside today, 150.01. Levels able to hold 151.67 to 153.09 will be tested. Unable to hold 148.39 to 147.17 on the downside. Overall on Apple, going to be leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher if that pivot point is able to hold. So looking for a continuation grind to the upside. Daily chart on Apple still looks good. It's you know, holding all EMA support, et cetera. Let's actually just take a quick look at it. I should be having, I should put these up on the side anyways. Makes it a little bit easier. You can see obviously bullish consolidation. The upside above EMA support, everything looks good in that regard. So I think we can get some continuation today. Amazon, let's take a look at this. Obviously, we got a short-term EMA support reclaim on the upside, which is fantastic. Get rid of this. Pivot to the upside today, 33.07. Levels able to hold. We got room towards 33.38. Unable to hold. We look for a pullback to 32.74 on the downside. Overall on Amazon, going to be leaning bullish out the gate, looking for a pop, and then I do think we'll come in a little bit because it will be slightly extended to the upside on the daily. But it doesn't mean we can't get a little bit more continuation this morning, that's what I'm thinking at least. So that's 33.07.71 as the pivot on Amazon. Let's take a look at Netflix. So Netflix, let's take a look. All right, 552.68 pivot to the upside today. Levels able to hold. We got room towards 557.34. Unable to hold. Look for pullback to 544.20 to 536.28. Netflix bullish consolidation on the daily. It is slightly extended, but we do have room to retest that recent range high on the upside. So today I'll be leaning on the bullish neutral side, looking for a grind back into that double top, see if we can break the range. And if we can, then obviously we'll have some further room for continuation to the upside. It's done a pretty good job of holding its extensions last couple of days. And that is very bullish because it hasn't pulled back on them. So it just represents continued momentum and staying power. And I think that can lead it to push on continuation today into that resistance level. Let's take a look at Facebook. Let's get rid of some of these lines here. So obviously we know that the downtrend on the daily on Facebook has been broken. That's clear. We do have some room for continuation to the upside. Resistance right now is going to be that 367 area. That's going to be your pivot. Unable to hold 362.65 to 358.88 will be tested. And of course, if this level is able to hold, we do have some room to the upside. Oopsies. Let's get the next couple of resistance levels. You got room towards 373. So I'm leaning bullish on Facebook. I think the daily looks awesome. It held the downtrend break yesterday. Obviously, you can see that it came back, pulled into it in the morning, and then actually held it and pushed off of it. So that's very bullish in my opinion. It's giving you confirmation that it's broken to the upside, and I think we can see continuation higher because of that. That's Facebook. Let's take a look at Google. So Google's definitely extended to the upside on the daily. That's clear. Short-term resistance levels. So what do we got? We got the pivot as 282, or sorry, 28.21, 90. This level is able to hold. We got room towards 28.41.95, making your last day's high. If that level breaks, 286.63. Unable to hold 27.99 to 27.77.80 on the downside will be retested. Overall on Google, going to be leaning on the bearish side today. Looking for it to come in a little bit, fill the gap on that extension. And then after that, I do think it could see continuation, but I do think that gap does need to fill. So I'll be watching for that today. So that's Google. Let's take a look at the VIX and the Qs and then the IWM. So VIX, same levels as yesterday. 1680 is going to be the pivot. This level is able to hold 1781, 1854. Unable to hold 1592 will be tested on the downside. Overall on the VIX, going to be leaning on no direction, just using it for direction on the market. So obviously if the VIX starts to come in, I would expect the SPY to start to push back to the upside because typically they trade inversely. But of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Sometimes there's divergences where they move together, but I don't think that's going to happen today. It's not set up that way. Plus, it's fairly rare, right? QQQs, what do we have? Pretty much the same chart as Google, to be honest. And the Qs are definitely extended to the upside on the daily. So that's notable. A couple of fib extensions on the upside here. All right. So 375 is going to be the pivot to the upside today. This level is able to hold 376.12 and 377.84 will be tested. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards 373.37 to 370.77 on the downside. Over on the Qs, going to be leaning on the bearish side today, looking for them to pull back down. So I think you'll see a little bit of a, I guess, divergence between the Qs and the SPY. Queues are definitely extended. I think they need to fill the gap, and they typically do on the extension. So that is the QQQs. Let's take a look at the last but not least, the IWM here. So IWM, what do we got? We have a 50 EMA reclaim on the daily, which actually looks quite good. There should be a little bit of a downtrend break here as well. Yep. Downtrend break there as well, which we can see on the daily. On the pre-market, it's not as accurate. It just doesn't label as well. But big levels, 221. Let's move this up to that level, 22130. Okay. All right, so 221.30 going to be the pivot to the upside today. Levels able to hold. We have room for continuation towards that 22.31 resistance on the upside. That level breaks. We're going to see the, that should be a little bit higher. The 223 20 level tested. One sec, I don't know why it didn't label. There we go. Unable to hold the pivot, we look for a pullback into the 219.32, 217.67 on the downside. Overall on IWM, I'm going to be leaning on the bullish side today if we can hold the pivot. So today's going to be the day that we need to see confirmation of the 50 EMA break to the upside as well as the downtrend on the daily. So holding of the pivot is going to be, big key for that to occur. So watch that this morning. If it does come back below the pivot, then I do think it's going to start to pull back, give back some of these gains. Like it can pull back towards 218 on the downside. So if it does fail, it's got some room and quite a bit of room lower. Of course, big weighting on IWM with AMC and GME. Some of those meme names. So definitely keep an eye on those. They will drive this ETF today. Anyways, so that's the SPY, that's the FANG. Those are the individual names that we're looking at today, guys. I'm going to go ahead, pass over to Selfbeach while I type up the pre-market action plan. And then once I'm done, I'll come back on. We'll go through that and a real quick little recap, and we'll be ready for the open. So without further ado, Selfbeach, if you're ready, it's all yours, and I'll talk to you guys in a little bit.
Morning, guys. Okay, hump day. Let's see what we got going on. It's very, very, very quiet this morning. Okay, 10 years unchanged, 1297. So looking at the range over the last few weeks, months, whatever, we're towards the bottom of the trend of the trading range, I should say. High was what, like 175, low was like 115. We're at 129, so at the bottom. All right. We'll see. Okay, we have that big meeting, right? The Jackson Hole virtual meeting, I think, is Friday and Saturday. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's look what the rest of the world is looking like in their bond market. In London, it's up a fair amount, 0.035 and 0.57. Okay, in Germany, it's up 0.03, but it's still a minus 0.44. Italy, no one cares. France, no one cares. Japan, flat, zero. They're 10 years at zero. Borrow all the money you want for nothing. Okay, so I'm a money manager. I got $1 trillion to invest. How can you put it in bonds? Right? It's very difficult. So stocks continue to be the best game in town. All right, that's that. Let's look at commodities. So oil is up 50 cents. Okay, it had a pretty good drop. And now it's kind of moving in the middle of its range. Not quite in the middle, but close. Okay, so that's that. And agricultural metals, let's see, copper's up 2 cents, 428. Again, kind of sort of in the middle, lower end of its range. Agricultural commodities are pretty flat, and lumber's hanging out at 509. Still kind of even with its pre-pandemic lows. Okay, so that's commodities. None of which tells you we're having inflation yet, okay? Currency-wise, the dollar is up against North America, up against Japan, flat against China, and pegged against the euro. In the crypto world, we got to 50,000, and that's providing some resistance. So we have what, a 40,000, 50,000 trading range at the moment. Some of the coins are doing a lot better than the ones that we look at, but Bitcoin's down less than 1%, and Ethereum is what? Down 2%. Okay, and let's look at the foreign markets. Very quiet. The last time I looked, FTSE is up 0.2%, 20 bucks, 18 bucks. DAX is flat as a pancake, down 12. Looking at Asia, Nikkei is dead flat. China's almost dead flat, up 0.2, and Hong Kong is pretty much dead flat. Okay, so I think a lot of people are waiting for the Fed, number one. Number two, it is August, and volatility is being sucked out of the market. Okay, individual names, not so much, but by and large, that's what we're seeing, okay? Which makes trading a little more difficult, but trading's been pretty good the last week or so, so we'll see, okay? I think people are positioning. So we have that meeting, like I said, the Fed meeting. Now, Kramer was talking about it last night. He has this technician who over the years has been pretty good, okay, Larry Williams. And he's saying that bonds are positioned to have a big move with higher yields, okay? Now, you know, who was that guy? What's his name? From the guy that took the GME stake, Dr. Burry, right? He took a big position in these, and he took a big short position in ARK, vis-a-vis options. So that's what he's seeing. We'll see, okay? But if there was a big spike up in interest rates, that would affect what? Tech stocks the most, right? At least on the onset, all right? So that's that. So that's something to keep aware of. Gunlack, some of you like him, some of you don't. I think he's super smart. He was talking yesterday. He said the U.S. is operating as if operating our economy as if we're not interested in maintaining our global reserve currency status. I think he's dead right. Okay, and we had the Democratic leader of Congress out there today saying this package that they're talking about is not $1.5 trillion. It's not 3.5 trillion. He says it's a $5 trillion package. Okay. And that gets to my point, which I always maintain. I always like one branch of government to be, you know, I don't like all branches to be the same party because they push their agenda too hard and it's just bad for everybody, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. I don't think it really matters. And in this particular case, $5 trillion seems like an insane number to me if they were going to get that through. That would destroy the dollar, in my opinion. Okay. And I think one of the things that makes America American is the fact that the dollar is the reserve currency. And if we were to lose that, it would affect us horribly, in my opinion. Okay. So these guys are playing with fire. And I honestly don't think anyone in Washington is intelligent enough to figure that out. But that's just my opinion. Okay, and that's on both sides. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, they always say that if you read economists, the thing that the country has most in their favor is the dollar being the reserve currency. The other thing is geographical, the river system in this country. But let's move away from that. That's a whole nother story. So we have this big cybersecurity meeting in Washington. I doubt anything comes of that. You have the fiasco in Afghanistan, and you have a president whose approval rating keeps getting smashed. That's what's going on politically. And then you have the big thing, which is the meeting on Friday. China, pretty quiet overnight. The only thing I read was that a bunch of business leaders want to start negotiating with China about getting better access into their economy. Okay, good luck. Hope that works out well. Crypto we discussed. I see the trading range 40, 50,000. Oil we talked about. Virus. Some states are mandating shots, others are not. Some companies are mandating it, other companies are not. J&J came out today and said they think that a booster shot's a good idea. That's up to them. We'll see what happens with that. But it seems like numbers are getting a little better as far as the Delta virus is concerned. They were talking about it on TV. It's getting a little better in Britain, most of Europe, here as well. So we'll see. The dollar we discussed, and Mr. Market yesterday. So Mr. Market yesterday, on the negative side, we had what, consumer non-durables, semis, and REITs. I'm sorry, and rails. And on the long side, we had high PE tech, banks, China, crypto, casinos, big oil, E&P, hotels, airlines, retail, home builders, machinery, etc. Okay, cruise lines as well. So you had the reopening trade, basically, basically that was what was really going, right? And you had the Chinese stocks, which were really strong, a bounce off the bottom. You had that gal who's on Halftime Report, I forget her name. She was on this morning saying, these Chinese stocks are not trading on fundamentals. It's completely different. And she's been backing what I've been saying. They're uninvestable based on what the Chinese government has been doing lately. And that's how I see it. They're tradable, not investable. So I'll stick with that narrative. Okay, so earnings out today, positive on SCSC, Intuit, Toll, PLAB, SCVL. Dix was a monster number, obviously stocks up a bunch, and EH. A bunch of additions and subtractions in the S&P, mostly in the small caps, so BLFS, OPCH, TRMK, MIME, all up because of additions to an S&P. Taiwan Semi is going to increase the price of some of their products. That stock is up 3 on that. And durable good orders, kind of sort of in line, right? Slightly better than expectations, I'd say. All right. On the negative side, you had Iwm. This company's management are just, they're horrific. They really are horrific. I don't know how many quarters in a row they've missed, but they just stink. KC was bad, Urban, and LMNR. Sava, you have that question regarding scientific integrity, and that stock's down a bunch on that. You have an 11 million share secondary coming in at Riot, and PRPL, the CFO, stepped down. And you never want to see your CFO step down. So that stock's down a little on that. All right, let's move to research. Iwm, neutral to sell. This is Mike Boss. Mike Boss. Hold on a second. Let me just make sure it's the right guy. Yeah, Matt Boss, excuse me. So he's the number 1 guy, downgraded to sell, target 34. Okay. I think they may drag down Macy's with it. We'll see, maybe Kohl's as well. What else? Beyond Beef was downgraded by Argus, but it wasn't a hard downgrade and they gave no target. Campbell's Pork and Beans, which acts terrible, was downgraded to neutral based on higher commodity prices. And Sam was downgraded to lowered the price target at Goldman. And Cowen went to a sell with a $400 target. And the stock is $600. You guys remember when I was saying that the stocks are short at 1,200 and someone was having an argument with me? I said because big guys are coming into the business, and I used that analogy of Apple going into the watch business with Fossil, and they thought I was smoking something. Well, the stock's gone from 1,300 to 600. So whenever you have a company and a bunch of guys come in, they're good. I don't know what their market share is going to be, but it's going to be more than 0, and it's going to come right out of the hide of the big guy. And that's what happened to Sam Adams with that, spike seltzer that they sell. FRPT, reiterate the sell at Citibank. They reduced the target from 139 to 120, and the stock's 132. So On the short side, I don't really trade Sam, so not that one for me. Maybe FRPT. Certainly, I'll take a hard look at JWin. Okay. And that's that. Let's look at the long side. Oh, there's one other sell, TBPH, but that's yesterday's news when they outperformed to sell. I just think Morgan's a day late with that call, so ignore it. Okay, so on the long side, what do we have? Raymond James likes Okta, outperformed to strong buy, target 300 to, I think it says 340. My handwriting's so bad, I can barely read it myself. Let's see the target. 300 to 310, not 340. Stock's 247, so that's significant, right? A bunch of guys like PDD, but they lowered their target. But like I said, these stocks are not trading on fundamentals, okay? If it traded on fundamentals, all these stocks would be a lot higher. But like I said, I don't think they're investable, so I don't really care what these analysts say. But I'm going to repeat them for your edification. PDD, target 168 to 140, reiterate the buy at Citibank. Okay, what else? Medtronics, everybody likes that. They had a good number. Morgan raises the target to 154. AFRM, Bank of America likes that one, raised the target to 82 from 71, stock 68. I did buy some yesterday, as you know. BBY, guys are raising targets in that, and Kramer was humping it last night on the show. Bank of America's got a 157 target, stock's 121. RCII, they initiate that with a buy, target 85, stock 64. I mean, the stock looks like it's breaking out, so it might be worthwhile. The problem is the volume, average volume is only 400,000. So I try not to trade anything that trades less than 1 million shares. That's just my style. Intuit, everybody raising their target in that right across the board. Okay, Stifel has a 6.25 target. Mizuho has a 640 target. Morgan Stanley 615 target. You get the drift. Okay, they had a great number, 640 at Bank America. Everybody loves it. Okay, I remember in the Microsoft tried to buy this and they couldn't buy it because of antitrust reasons way back when. What else? Wedbush. They reiterate the buy in a bunch of restaurant stocks, but they lowered the targets. So like Cake, they go from 70 target to 55, stocks 50, 44. Denny Dine 113 to 97, stock 77. Eat 76 to 69, stocks 54. You get the drift, okay? I hate when analysts do that. All right, I don't want to see them lower numbers, reiterate the buy. I want to see them raise numbers and reiterate the buy. So that call is not for me. Is there anything else worth talking about here? No, I don't think so. I think the big call is Okta. And is there anything else that I think we can trade off? Not really, guys. Not really. I think the research is pretty light. Okay, Kathy, what did she do? She bought a bunch of DraftKings, 1 million shares of that. She bought this Fate, which had that bad day on Monday, and she's been buying a lot of it since. She bought 500,000. This SRNG SPAC, she bought 1.1 million. MKFG, she bought 300. Pfizer, she bought. JD, she bought 1 million shares. That's the only name I've seen her buy on the Chinese side is JD. Else. MKFG, she continues to buy. She sold some BABA. She sold some Bristol. She sold some Square. Okay. Group rotation today. How do I think it's going to play out? I think these semis might be okay if they're going to, if they're going to start putting through price increases. This group can go up. I think that people are going to anticipate the Fed being more tighter with money, and maybe the banks get a little wind at their back. The Chinese stocks, I don't know what's going to be with those. I don't have an idea in my head. But I think these high PE tech stocks may, people may try to front run getting lighter in those groups going into the Fed meeting. So I think people are kind of anticipating the Fed being a little less generous, and they're trying to game that call. That's how I think it's going to play out. Anything else? Oh, syndicate, there was nothing, 0. And that's really it, guys. There's not much else. I do think the economy, the stocks that work in a, if the economy opens up a little bit, will have the wind at their back more than others. Okay, so, maybe you get a little push in like airlines and stuff like that, restaurants, so on. But, I think it's going to be a really choppy day. And I think it probably stays choppy through Friday, because I think people are a little confused as to how this is playing out, and they're going to want to reduce positions into the meeting, reduce exposure. I mean, that's what I'm going to do. So I would think that's a natural thing to do. Okay, they just don't, people have had a pretty good year, maybe very good year, and they don't want to lose money, and so they're going to play it tight. Okay, that's how I see it. Maybe, maybe they'll play it with options or what have you, but I think people are going to play it tight and reduce exposure into Friday. So because of that, I think it's going to be very tight and very choppy. And so you got to pick the stocks that are, basically trading on their own, not influenced by the economics involved. So that's what I'll be trying to do. And that's it for me, guys. Okay, so I'm out of time. If I see anything, I'll let you know. And let's have a good day. Don't overtrade in this kind of environment. Just pick your spots. Okay. And if you're going to trade in the morning, trade at night, and pull back in the middle of the day. All right. That's it for me. Spartan, it's all yours, buddy.
All righty. Thank you, South Beach. Guys, morning. What's going on? So let's do a quick little recap of what we talked about this morning. Let's go through the pre-market action plan, all posted and written up. If you guys are on YouTube, you want to read through it, you can simply just pause it and read through it here. You can see it there and there. You can see all the charts that are posted, as well as on the options side, we have all the options notes. Okay. All right, let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint intraday. Oh, sorry, let's take a look at the names first. Into Okta, TSM, DKS, SABA, and SPRT. So into earnings beat, EPS and revs, year-over-year growth 41%, Q1 guidance lower, 2022 guidance raised, stocks gapping up. Okta, Raymond James upgrades Okta to strong buy, raises price target to 310. TSM company plans to increase price on some of their more advanced products by 10%. DKS earnings beat, EPS and revs, year-over-year growth 20.7%, 2022 guidance raised, stocks gapping up. SABA gapping down, law firm request FDA to halt study after hours. And then SPRT gapping up a continuation from last day's move. Let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint. Intraday. So first two guys, Into and Okta. All right, guys. So Into gapping up 569.07 levels able to hold. They got room towards 579.77. If that level breaks, we can see further continuation on the upside into that 586. I think 50 level. Sorry, 586.70. Oh yeah, 586.50 on the upside. Unable to hold 559.81 to the 552.86 on the downside. Overall, on Into leaning bullish, looking for a hold to pivot this morning, and then a continuation push higher. Okta pivot 256.53 level holds 261.46. If that level breaks, we can see further continuation into the 266.52. Unable to hold, look for pullback towards that 252.04 to 246.04 on the downside, leaning bullish on Okta, looking for a continuation push to the upside today. Let's take a look at TSM and let's take a look at DKS. TSM 115.88 pivot to the upside today, levels able to hold. Room towards 117.91 to 119.52. Unable to hold 114.16 to 112.99 on the downside will be tested. Overall on TSM going to be leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher if that level can hold. Basically the pivot. We've got to hold the pivot for that continuation push to the upside. Alrighty, let's take a look at the next name here, which is DKS. So DKS 126.34 pivot, levels able to hold, room towards 130.63 to 132.66. Unable to hold, 121.31 to 118.06 on the downside will be tested. Overall on DKS leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher. Out the gate this morning. I like names that break all-time highs after earnings and have good guidance for continuation at least. Saba pivot 80.72, unable to hold 71.96 to 65 will be tested on the downside. Able to be reclaimed, look for pushback to 90.86 to 98.22 on the upside. Overall on Saba leading bearish, looking for a continuation lower if that pivot's unable to hold. So we'll see what happens there. DKS, let's take a look at this. 126.34 pivot, levels able to hold. He got room towards, not DKS, sorry, SPRT. SPRT 12.62 pivot, levels able to hold. We got room towards 14.72 to the 16.16 spot of resistance on the upside. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards 10.89 to 9.55 on the downside. Overall on SPRT, going to be leaning on the bullish side today, looking for a continuation push higher. Let's take a look at this fine thing. SPY 448.59 pivot, levels able to hold. They got room towards 449.86 to 450.71 on the upside. Unable to hold, 447.18 to 445.97 will be tested on the downside. Overall on the SPY, going to be leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher today. And let me just quickly check this out. 448.59 pivot. The upside today. Level holds. Room higher into the 449.86 resistance. Breaks, we see the 450.71 level tested. Pivot unable to hold. Room lower into the 447.18 support. Breaks, we see the 445.97 level tested. Leaning bullish neutral. So leaning bullish neutral on the market. Let's take a look at Apple here. So Apple still got a flag break or range break, sorry, set up to the upside. 150.01 pivot, level holds 151.67 will be tested if that level breaks. 153.09 unable to hold. 148.39 on the downside to 147.17 will be tested. Overall on Apple leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher today. Let's take a look at Amazon. So Amazon pivot to the upside, guys, is going to be this 33.07 level hold, 33.38, unable to hold 32.74. A little bit extended to the upside on the daily. Looking for a pop out the gate, then topping for it to come back in, fill that gap. Let's take a look at Netflix. Pivot to the upside today, guys, is going to be that 552.68 level holds, 557.34, unable to hold 544.20 will be tested on the downside. And overall, Netflix is going to be leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher today. It's been holding up quite well on the daily. On the extension, I think we can get continuation today. So that's what I'm looking at. Facebook, nice flag out on the daily. Pivot upside 367. Level holds 373 will be tested. Unable to hold 362.65. The 358.88 on the downside. And overall on Facebook, leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push higher today. Let's take a look at Google. Google pivot upside is going to be the 28.21.90. Level holds 28.41 to 28.63. Unable to hold 2800 will be tested on the downside, and overall on Google leaning bullish, looking for a continuation push to the upside today. Let's take a look at the the VIX, the Qs, and the IWM. VIX pivot to the upside, guys, is going to be the 1680 level. Levels able to hold 1781, 1854 will be tested. Unable to hold 1592 on the downside, and overall on VIX, going to be leaning bearish, not leaning, sorry, any direction, but if I'm leaning bullish on the market, you would expect the VIX to come in. Let's take a look at the QQQs. QQQs, guys, pivot upside is going to be that 375 level, able to hold 376.12 to 377.84 will be tested. Unable to hold 373.37 to 370.77 on the downside. Overall on the QQQ, going to be leaning on the bearish side today. Looking for this to come in, fill its extension gap, and yeah, we'll see what happens after that. Let's take a look at IWM. That's what I was looking for. Last but not least, guys, IWM pivot to the upside. 221.31 levels able to hold. 222.31 to 223.19 will be tested. Unable to hold the 50 MA on the daily. We look for a pullback to 219.32 to 217.67. Pivot super important here. We'll see if it's able to hold a little bit extended to the upside, but above the pivot. So benefit of the doubt, I'm going to give it, or be leaning on the bullish neutral side if the pivot can hold today. So that's the SPY, that's the FANG. Those are the individual names that we're looking at today, guys. Thanks for joining us this morning on our pre-market stream. If you have any questions, you can go to Spartan Trading.